let's just get straight into this, Stephen. I'm fascinated by the connection between sort of the reality of the world, hacking as a sort of universal level, Stephen, and I'm interested in how we as CISOs have to manage that balance in, I guess, multi-modes of communication. We've got the board, we've got the management levels, we've got our colleagues in the C-suite and so on and so forth. And you and I were musing over this over a coffee last time, and it was like, I've really got to write this up with you because it's so interesting. And it's nothing to do with a specific organization. It is so universal, especially in large enterprise. And you talked about cyber risk quantification. We're almost imposing for the sake of making something meaningful to a specific audience, let's say the board, we have to put a quantification metric in. But the trouble is cyber is so intangible in so many ways, right? Yeah. So are we almost like putting a measured net over something that is much more, it's inappropriate almost to measure, isn't it? It's difficult to match the metrics. Apples and oranges, I don't know.
I guess from my perspective, as being in a position that I've got something to hang my hat on. So if I'm saying it's high risk, I want numbers exactly to justify why that is high risk, so that when I'm prompted, when I'm questioned, I've got factual data to go back to. Because there's nothing worse than presenting something to the board and being asked to justify something, and you're just going, I was thinking it was this, and it's not actually this. And I think that's why I've leaned towards things like looking at cyber risk quantification, or some way of being able to go, okay, well, it's not high risk, it's a value between this and this, to try and convey, I guess, our value, and being able to then do a comparison to say, well, we're protecting, say, in one instance, a risk that could vary from 10 million to 60 million, but then the cost of the team and the licenses and everything might only be like 5 million. And you can really clearly go, well, you can see on a piece of paper how that value is reflected.
The problem I'm seeing here, I've just written, from one of our conversations, a little sort of cluster of points. You've got board, you've got different Cs, so the CFO, the CTO, the COO, the CORO, all with different responsibilities, motivations, agendas.
Yeah.
Let's say they're all on point. I'm not going to be able to satisfy those. And then we've got the rest of the business we need to interface to as well. So we've got these metrics, great, and a range of metrics, but those metrics are not meaningful to each person, are they? They're not their metrics. They're not relatable. There's the answer. They're not relatable directly.
Yeah, agree. No, they're not. I think, and that's one of the challenges you have, that I might position my metrics to the board and I might roll them up. I'll roll up the level of risk to something that the board will understand at conceptual level across the whole organisation. But those same risks might not resonate with the CMO or the COO. They'll be like, well, that's nothing really to do with, so that, I guess, and that creates that engagement issue. But I think it's also worth saying, and this is what I find difficult, this is a real balancing act with, you're trying to convey the risk to the business. You're trying desperately not to get your partners offside, and sometimes it's your partners that are causing the issue. And I think that's where I think I struggle with this fine line. And it's the same with the board. Like there's board members who are on your side that you really don't want to collectively, I guess, drop them in it and get them offside as well.
Tell me about the near miss, the close call, because sometimes it's a bit like on a freeway. Not being funny, how many times have you been nearly swiped on the freeway by this wonderful 4-lane overtaking thing? And we sit there and go, whoa, and then we just move on. But our life was at risk at that point, but we normalise it.
But if you look at a ransomware incident, it's I like that analogy, it's the same. Because if you have a ransomware incident, but the car was off in the distance and they did a stupid maneuver, but there was no risk to you whatsoever because you were far enough away from it. But like, okay, I can pivot, I'll go into a different lane, I'll slow down. There's a huge difference between they have an accident right in front of you. It could really have impacted you. You were so close. You had to react really, really quickly. And I think that would probably have more impact at demonstrating the issue if I was closer to the issue on the motorway or with the car than it would be if I was further away. So
okay,
it's like
one for you then.
You have to fly close to the sun to demonstrate, I guess, how well you're doing your job.
Wow.
And I guess that's where we live in, but sometimes we can only demonstrate that value by going, look, this was really nearly, this was a major issue that we've dodged this. this could have been so much worse, rather than going, oh, look, we've got a ransomware on an email, but we blocked it. And they go, great. And there's a huge difference between that and going, okay, yeah, we had it on a number of machines, it broke, but we managed to contain it. The net result could have been exactly the same. It's just that where you capture it can kind of influence, how the rest of the organisation views your function, which is a bit sad, really. It's like, well, it goes back to what I say, if we do a really, really good job and we manage to catch things early, the business probably does say, well, what value do they bring? I mean, I'll get a quiz like, how many near misses have we had? And I'll tell them what the near miss was. And it's like,
Isn't that a super powerful question? So because so many boards want a beautiful deck and they want it polished, and then we spend 2 weeks every quarter agonizing over what goes in, how it's presented and what serif we use and that kind of stuff. Whereas shouldn't we be having just a human discussion saying, okay, we'll back it with some stuff that you can look at, but let's have a real conversation. How are we doing, Steve?
And the question I've had, and I actually include this, is what's keeping me awake at night? And I've had board meetings where they've said, well, Steve, what's keeping you awake at night? And I've gone, right, these are the things that are really worrying me, and this is what's worrying me. And that is more powerful because they've entrusted me to manage that kind of risk, for me to say, well, these are the things that actually I'm really worried about personally, and that's keeping me awake. I think that is a lot more powerful than going, oh, well, this is high risk and this is medium risk. The board is saying, oh, well, our risk appetite is low, whatever that means. My biggest worry from a risk perspective is obviously the accidental insider report. So it's the biggest risk I worry about is that we inadvertently do something that exposes us as an organisation. And I've used that quite a lot with the board. That said, that worries me a lot, because a lot of the larger breaches have been internal stuff-ups. Really, that's been the root cause of it. But that's really hard to articulate to the board through like a dashboard and a risk.
This is brilliant. You've just nailed something. All we really need to do is get back to our board advisor role, which is where perhaps the CISO should really be, which is, guys, this is the sense I need to bring together. So is there opportunity in this, or is it a frustration that we're just not solving as an industry because we're consumed in the politics, pace, general setup of well-run organizations, but cyber then just gets such a shrinking voice here? And how do we deal with that? Because this is a universal problem here.
I've had things where it's a case of, well, should I be worried about X? And I've gone, I'm not particularly worried. There's been things reported in the news where all I've had a quick question that goes, Steve, are you worried about this? I'm like, no. Whereas everyone else is sending messages everywhere and there's emails hitting people's mailboxes going, oh, this is what we're doing. It's just hey, Steve, are you worried? I'm like, no.
But that's magic. I really respect that. That is where a CISO should be. Board says, or other C-levels say, Steve, you worried? No, I'm not. Why? Because I've worked that problem for years. I, as Steve, has worked that problem for years. And my sense tells me, my distilled sense, there you go, tells me, no, we're okay. And you'd have validated that anyway, knowing you. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's the ultimate. Well, that's what a real CISO should be, right?
Yeah. And we do try and maybe get in this feedback loop. I have before, where I've worked on dashboards and I've worked on dashboards of the dashboards, and it's just gone this endless loop where I'm trying to refine and I'm trying to quantify what's in my head. And sometimes you can't. Like, you cannot articulate some of the thoughts and the feelings you have on a piece of paper, on a risk matrix, or through dollars. Like, some of it has to be expressed as a conversation, which...
Yeah. Just to wind this back into some pragmatic pieces of advice then. So if we're going to move the industry, Stephen, in terms of really helping the board gain a sense, this is what I've got out of this conversation. We need to help them have more sense, if that makes sense, no pun, and be more adaptive perhaps, and more contextual, and perhaps more trusting of the CISO in certain times. What would you recommend to other CISOs out there? Because you've been time in cycles, you've stayed in roles for a long time, and that's allowed you to develop that sense and trust, hasn't it? How do we change this now in board trust?
I always say, and I've said this a few times, one of the first and foremost things that you need to try and do as a CISO is find who your board champion is. There's always going to be somebody on the board who's probably going to be more switched on around what your role is or the importance of your role, or there might be technology focused, but there's always going to be a board member who really gets it. And my view is, and I've been really, really lucky, this particular board member now is amazing, but then working with that board member and asking the question, like, what do you want to know? Like, how do you want it presented? And you kind of build up that level of trust with that board member, because you're asking them, okay, how would you like to present this? And I worked with one who's helped me with, like, radically change how I report it.
Brilliant.
Because it was based on, well, this is what I want to know. But then you have the benefits of that, because when you're not in that room, you have that champion. You kind of have this pseudo cyber person who's actually sat on the board. It's the person that you've been communicating with. It's the person you're having a two-way conversation, not a one-way conversation where I'm the sizer going, hey guys, these are the things that I think you want to know. You've had a two-way conversation, so you've got kind of this proxy that when you're not there, that they're kind of championing your cause. So I would say to anyone, like, try and find that board member and then develop a relationship and communicate with them and have a two-way conversation, not a one-way talk at them, because you've got the engagement from them as well. You've got their emotional buy-in to your role, because you are talking to them saying, right, and I was open, like, I'm not sure how to communicate this, and what do you think to this? And, she'd go, well, that's probably prefer it like this, this, and this. And you go, okay, cool. But they've got that emotional, I guess, involvement with, even things like creating, what do the reports look like, and how am I going to position the reports, and how often am I going to position the reports? How do I demonstrate the entire context of everything? But they've had involvement in that, and they know every single report that you produce, they've been involved with creating, that template. So, you're going to get more buy-in. And it's something it's taken me a while, because I've come from a technology background, so human interaction has never been high up on my list. So it has been a learned skill. As I've matured, I think it's something that I've had to kind of embrace, for a very long time in my career, because I have been very, very technical. I've probably not been the best at, I guess that level of human interaction. So it's something that I've kind of worked on, to try and improve. And that's why the speaking gigs as well, they've helped me a lot, because I've been able to communicate to people at very different levels. But also I've been able to respond very, very quickly to curly questions, and I've been able to think on my feet, and I've been able to not get flustered, and I've been able to just communicate effectively at the person who's asked the question and practice that. And that's why I do the speaking as well, because it helps me, I guess, with that communication and trying to get it on point and trying to get my point across, and being able to field questions from the side that, normally I might get really flustered and go, I'm going to have to go away, but I can remain composed, and I think it's just personal development.
What an interesting end to that.